In 2021, judges at the Milan Tribunal delivered their ruling on the criminal case involving ANI, Shell, and others accused of international corruption tied to acquiring Nigeria's OPL 245 oil field. The tribunal acquitted all defendants, stating there was no case to answer. 5 years later, the Tinubu presidency announced yesterday that the federal government, ENI, and Nigerian Agip Exploration Limited had reached an amicable settlement, potentially leading to an increase of over 150,000 barrels of oil production per day from the prolific OPL 245 field. A positive development for Nigeria's oil production. And former Nigeria Attorney General Adoke says he deserves an apology. Hello, this is Global Business Insights, where we look at the world from a business perspective and bring you news, views, and analysis that helps to bring you up to date on the context. Global Witness reported in 2019 that Shell and ENI's deal for the OPL 245 oil block involved unusual terms to fund bribes and increase their internal valuations, which justified an upfront payment of $1.1 billion. Italian prosecutors asserted that the $1.1 billion paid by Shell and ENI for the OPL 245 license was allegedly utilized to compensate former Nigerian Oil Minister Dan Etete, government members, and other Nigerian public officials. Oil companies have benefited economically by facilitating corruption in countries such as Nigeria, potentially to the detriment of Nigerian citizens. An analysis conducted by Resources for Development and Expert Oil Consultancy commissioned by NGOs, including Global Witness, further indicated that the terms of this agreement could decrease Nigerian government revenue from these fields by $5.86 billion over the project's lifetime, compared to the standard production sharing contract terms established in Nigeria since 2005. Nigeria attempted to pursue civil claims against Shell and ENI over the deal, which they said Shell and ENI engaged in bribery and unlawful conspiracy to harm the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and that they dishonestly assisted corrupt Nigerian government officials. The then Attorney General Abubakar Malami, also now under different EFCC corruption charges, tried to reach a settlement with the companies with a deal including Nigeria reacquiring a stake in OPL 245. According to Bloomberg, Attorney General Abubakar Malami stated in a letter to President Muhammadu Buhari dated February 6, 2023, that delays in the development of the block have resulted in significant economic repercussions for Nigeria. Also claims that a substantial portion of the $1.1 billion paid by ENI and Shell to the Nigerian government for oil prospecting license 245 was later misappropriated as bribes and kickback, has experienced notable legal setbacks in courts in Italy and the United Kingdom. In 2020, ENI commenced arbitration against Nigeria, alleging that the government breached its obligations by declining to convert the permit to one authorizing hydrocarbon production. Malami recommended that President Buhari order the discontinuation of a lawsuit filed against the two companies by Nigeria's anti-corruption agency, as well as the termination of all investigations related to the license. But President Buhari reportedly rejected any settlement. Instead, he ordered a halt to development of the oil block until all issues are resolved and the legal process has run its course. Now it has, apparently in favor of Shell and ENI. Barnaby Pace, a campaigner at Global Witness, said it was unacceptable for Shell and ENI to retain the right to the OPL 245 agreement given the surrounding controversy. Additionally, another campaigner noted that although the Italian government claims to support Nigerian migrants by assisting them in their home country, Italy's largest multinational corporation, which is partially state-owned, is alleged to have deprived Nigerian citizens of significant financial resources. The OPL 245 case raises concerns that the interests of local communities may not be prioritized over the corporate profits of oil giants. As of August 2025, the global anti-corruption blog GAB reported that Italy has repeatedly violated the OECD Anti-Bribery Convention due to its decision not to appeal the acquittal of ENI, a partially state-owned company, in a $1.1 billion bribery case involving Nigerian officials. GAB noted that the evidence suggesting misconduct was substantial. In a subsequent development, an Italian judge, Francesca Giacomini, confirmed that the evidence indicating ENI paid significant bribes for rights to Nigeria's OPL 2450 block was credible. Judge Giacomini ruled that ENI Gate, a book detailing the bribery scheme, relied on multiple reliable sources. She dismissed ENI's defamation suit against author Claudio Gatti and publisher Fato, and ordered ENI to cover the defendant's legal fees. According to GAB, Judge Giacomini's actions are noteworthy not solely for affirming the bribery allegations, but for her willingness to do so despite the positions of other judicial officials who had previously acquitted ENI, its executives, and associated parties of all charges. Today, we read that Mohammed Bello Adoke, former Attorney General of the Federation, says the settlement of the oil prospecting license OPL 245 dispute by President Bola Tinubu indicts the Muhammadu Buhari administration. This was as the presidency announced successful conclusion of what was described as a settlement agreement between the federal government, ENI, and Nigerian Egypt Exploration Limited, with photographs of ENI CEO Claudio Doscalzi, who was a former Nigeria country boss in 1998, later promoted in 2000 to executive vice president for ENI Africa, the Middle East, and China before emerging as CEO ENI. Perhaps bygones should be bygones as the Tinubu government achieves restoration of clarity, stability, and monetization that benefits Nigerians as it frees up an asset widely recognized as one of Nigeria's most commercially promising deep water blocks. The former Attorney General Bello Adoke applauded Tinubu and his able special advisor on the energy sector, Madam Olu Verajan, who in previous roles served as the deal lead at Shell, where she advised on gas commercialization and participated in multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions transactions. Adoke, in his own victory lap, says the settlement fully understands how the economy works and the importance of the oil-rich asset to the attainment of national economic goals, adding that he deserves an unreserved apology for how he was humiliated by the Buhari-led administration and trophy-hunting anti-corruption activists. To remind the many who may have forgotten, OPL 245 was awarded to Malabo in 1998 by Sani Abacha under very controversial terms. Malabo was linked to business interests of the Abacha family. Afterwards, it became the subject of global litigation. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo reportedly revoked OPL 245 license, primarily due to irregularities in its original allocation and opaque shareholding linked to Dan Etete, the former petroleum minister who fronted the Malabo deal. When Jonathan became president in 2010, the controversy appeared to have been resolved, with Shell and ENI agreeing to buy the block from Malabo for $1.1 billion. The oil companies also paid $210 million as signature bonus to the federal government, but anti-corruption activists launched an international campaign alleging that the deal was fraudulent and arguing that the proceeds were used to bribe government officials. Adoke was one of many officials entangled in the saga after then President Muhammadu Buhari filed criminal charges against him. Adoke was later discharged and acquitted in the related charges filed before two federal high courts in Abuja. Nigeria also lost all cases in Italy and the UK, while the US and Dutch authorities ended investigations without filing any charges. Dan Etete, the oil minister who oversaw the Malabo deal, was convicted of money laundering by a Paris criminal court in November 2007. The court determined that he had used about $15 to $16 million to acquire luxury properties in France, including a chateau, a Paris apartment, and a posh villa in Neuilly-sur-Seine. He received a 3-year prison sentence and €300,000 fine. An arrest warrant was also issued. In 2014, the French government granted Etete a state pardon, and his conviction was expunged from his French criminal record. You could say nothing came out of all the fuss. All alleged corruption cases against companies and officials collapsed. In 2018, two middlemen, Emeka Obi and Gianluca Di Nardo, received 4-year sentences related to the Malabo deal after they made guilty pleas. These convictions were later overturned on appeal, and no prison time ultimately stood. Indeed, two Milan prosecutors, Fabio Do Pascali and Sergio Spadaro, received a suspended sentence of 8 months for judicial misconduct, for not filing documents that could have supported ENI's defense. In closing, Nigeria has even more to celebrate if oil stays at over $85 a barrel thanks to the crisis in the Middle East. Current account balances will improve remarkably for Nigeria and Angola. Upstream giants are also now more favorable to monetizing fossil fuels and could be returning to expand their print in viable blocks where the economics are right. Are anti-corruption activists trophy hunting in Nigeria? Are there corporate lessons from the OPL drama? A big one is the need for more transparency on deals, especially the financial terms and how these financial terms are agreed. Apart from the fact that oil giants almost always seem to win, helped by the massive legal capacity to fight to the end in courts anywhere in the world. Countries and foreign courts are also less keen to prosecute corruption issues in environments they do not understand so well, especially when these acts are officially nurtured by governments in power. We also seem to see a reduced interest in ethics and transparency as the environment becomes increasingly difficult and fraught with a mix of growth headwinds. Perhaps Mohamed Bello Adoke, former Attorney General of the Federation, does deserve an apology. As for the rest, as the French say, c'est la vie, I am told. To close, a much-awaited data release showed the US economy lost 92,000 jobs in February, in a month said to be marred by severe winter weather and a strike at a major healthcare provider. This was much less than the estimate for 50,000 and below the downwardly revised January total of 126,000 jobs. Tech employment in the US also fell as job cuts in the federal government continued. Well, that's all we're able to take on this special weekend edition of Global Business Insights. This is Bode Oshosami. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button. Bye-bye.